Hey everyone, happy Friday and thank you for joining us today for the AIME Women's Mortgage Network's Growth Series. This series is here for you to educate, inspire, and share your progress as we lift each other up to new levels. On today's show, we are diving into when it's time to hire a processor, identifying the right candidate, and the most effective way to train and develop us. We have with us the one and only Evan Wade, the president and CEO of Epic Lending. Evan, we have learned so many lessons from 2020, and one of them has definitely been the importance of looking forward, hiring the right candidates, and providing our teams with training that will allow them to be successful and grow our organizations. I want to approach this from a broker perspective. So, Evan, let's start with that moment in time when you realize it's time to hire a processor. And where does that come from in terms of now you have a decision to make, right? What way do I go about it? Do I use contract processing? Do I hire an internal team member? So let's start with making that decision as a business owner and broker owner. And then once you've analyzed that and made that decision, where do you go to find that right talent and fit for your team?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I would say that I came at the realization that I needed to hire, operations people kind of out of necessity, and it was, I kind of made a mistake in that respect. I'm a big believer in leading with operations and then following it with sales. A lot of this industry is typically backwards. You lead with sales, and then you try to backfill with operations, and that causes all sorts of issues as far as fulfillment goes. You kind of follow. I try to follow that kind of mantra that Matt Ishbia talks about all the time in his speeches, overstaffed by design. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that you should hire people even if you don't think you have the need for them right now. Did I lose you guys there for a second?
Yeah, I think you're coming back. You're good. Right, that's cool. Okay. Little internet blip there.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi
so
not
hire
too great
them
in this office.
So hire, overstaff, and hire even when you may not have the sales in place or the pipeline to withstand that. And Evan, let's tackle that first, okay, before we keep going, because that's scary. Right? That
Very
is
scary.
Definitely, we've all gone through the cycles. We've all been in this situation of, everything is great when our pipelines are full. But, going back to, I know Matt mentioned that, I don't know if that was Fuse 2019 speech or all of that. And everybody, it sounds great. But then you're sitting there and you have that moment in time of, man, what if I do this? What if I have to let people go? What if I can't back this up with the sales? So how do you first get over that? And then let's keep along in the process.
I think it's more or less trusting in yourself and knowing that you have the ability that, that you have that extra ops staff behind you, that you're free to go out and build that business. So you're never going to get there if you're in the weeds of your loans. So that's where you kind of have to have that philosophical discussion with yourself, that where do you want to go? Do you want to be in the weeds of your loans all the time, or do you want to be able to be more of a business owner and have a team that's going to do all that for you? So my belief is that if you have the operations, that you're going to be able to go out there and utilize your time on revenue generating activities at the end of the day.
I think you're 100% correct, because otherwise it's just the chase. It's just this constant chase of it. And I think when you have that confidence that that team is there, it kind of pushes you to, I have to make sure this pipeline is full, right? And I have to take care of the business.
Exactly. And you don't want to let the people down that you hired. So
that is right.
For me personally, it's a motivator to step it up. Whether that's, hiring new people or helping my existing people grow to utilize those processors. That's what I'm focused on.
I love it. Okay, so we made the decision. Hey, Casey! Hello, welcome.
Hello.
We have the wonderful Casey, CEO and founder of Zinix, with us. Here she is. All right, so hang tight. We're making our way through the progression here. Okay, so Evan just kind of gave us his insight of when we make the decision that we want to add some new team members, why we're doing it. Now let's get into the how we're doing it. So Evan, keep us on this path. Now we've determined, okay, I'm growing my team, I'm overstaffing, I'm taking care of them. How do you find the right candidates? What tools are you using, and how do you go about that?
I actually did a combination. I did both. I used a professional recruiter, a company called Manpower, locally in Philadelphia. It's very, very, very expensive, but you can almost guarantee that you're going to have a good fit when you hire, through a recruiter. So if you are okay, dropping 20, 25% of that person's anticipated salary for you're going to have great success, and you'll know within the first 60 days whether they're a culture fit or not. And if they're not, usually they have, some sort of policy to replace that person, without extra charge. I also used a company called Wise Hire that is fantastic. It's like $160 a month. They post to 60 different job boards based on the posting. They do. After they apply, they'll send out an invite to have them complete a DISC profile test. And I know part of what we're going to be talking about is assessing, those candidates. So Wise Hire does a great job of doing that, included in that subscription fee, and kind of weeding out the candidates based on, typically the people who are going to complete all those assessments and answer that questionnaire they're more likely to be, actually interested in the position, unlike, the people that are just hopping on Indeed and machine gun applying to as many jobs as they can, but they don't have that follow through. So especially when you're looking to hire processors or even LOs, new LOs, you want those really detail oriented type of people anyway. So that's why I'm a big believer in a company like Wise Hire to, collect those applications and do that initial screening.
I love that. And I do think the assessments are a vital piece. I think over time, we've all determined that is very valuable once we have an idea of exactly who we're looking for to bring on board. Okay, great. So we know when, we know how. Now we've established, we've brought them on board. Okay, now we're up to the training part. So Evan, tell us, once we've boarded our new hires and we've brought them into the team and it's time to establish, how do we give them those fundamentals, okay? So Casey, lead us in with what those fundamentals are if we were to utilize Zinix for providing that training for our new processors.
Awesome. So can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. First of all, Evan, let me just say kudos. And I love the question, Laura, about the assessments, because if you get the formula right, and I've been doing this a long time, there is a formula to successfully hiring a new person and getting them into the market. And you started with the first part of the formula, and that's the sourcing aspect and making sure you absolutely nail how to locate them, how to screen them, and how to assess them. And I'm happy to give any insight there if you need anything. Now, the training is number 2, right? Source them well. Yep. The second is train them incredibly well. What most people don't realize is you can take a human being who doesn't know there's a T and 2 G's in mortgage, right? And literally teach them, and I'm going to say the word fundamentals / some people will call it basics, but this is beyond basics. This is the depths of Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, understanding property, assets, income, liabilities, and having being very versed not only in just the language, but the comprehension of it. You can take somebody from nothing, and in 2 weeks, that's 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. So if you start them on a Monday, you finish them the following Friday, they will come out, and you as a professional mortgage person can actually have a conversation with them, and they will have a decent comprehension. Now I'm gonna ask Evan, because he's actually used Zinix, and you put like not just 1 or 2, but I think 7 through now, Evan. And yeah, that's Casey, the owner, telling you that I know our training works. And this isn't a sales pitch by any means, because it's really about providing If you want to value your time and scale your business, you cannot be the one to train them every single day.
Correct.
There's too many gaps. You want to train them on your processes and your technology stacks, but let us take them and help you by training them on all the content. So when you're speaking to them, they have an understanding. So Evan, I don't know, I guess I could ask you, did they come out and were you surprised or not surprised? And obviously this is just a conversation.
Ye- Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic that they go through a 2-week training and you don't have to teach them what a DTI, LTV, conventional VA, FHA, all that, the mortgage math, all that stuff. It's nice to not have to do that, and then they can just jump into, then we teach them on our tech stack and actually how to process or originate a loan. So it establishes a fantastic baseline that will save you a lot of time. And not it's, for me too, the training is such an integral part of the culture I'm trying to build too. So I think that a lot of people kind of underestimate that. And I learned the business trial by fire. I didn't. So luckily it was in a low pressure environment. I started in a bank, and it was just part of my job in the branch, as a customer service rep. But like, I'm not a natural salesperson. So I had to learn the product, in detail, and the training wasn't there at the bank I worked for. So the way I learned it was reading guidelines cover to cover and doing the mortgage math on a piece of paper, because I didn't even have access to an LOS. I didn't even have access to an LOS. So
listen, Evan, we all figured it out, right?
We did.
And I don't, the way I learned, I don't wish that on anybody else.
No.
So I'd rather provide that robust training however possible. And Zenix has done a great job of that.
That actually takes me back. So Casey and Evan, what do you think like we use that word fundamentals, right? Not basics, but fundamentals. But what can we do as business leaders to make sure that we're putting them in the best position to be successful going through the training program? What can we do as the leaders?
Well, here's the good news. Is part of when you go do leverage us, we give you a guide that tells you what to do. Great. As a manager and as a leader, and it says, as the student is with Zenix, and I'm going to say with us because we have a full-time trainer dedicated to the student as they go through this comprehensive course, and it is self-study and self-paced, but quite frankly, 10 days for the operations program, our processing program called SOAR, they absolutely have a full-time trainer dedicated to them. So 8 hours a day, 10 days, leave them alone. They're going to come out now, teach them your tech stack, teach them what you want them to do, whether it's to set up a process. Now, for our salespeople, it's a much more rigorous program for obvious reasons. They're going out and generating loans, et cetera, and having to deal structure on a regular basis. But I think the key for managers to know that listen, we built Zenix for people like the mortgage broker world, like the small guys who can't afford to go build their own training department. And we said, let's make it so affordable where people can go and realizing, don't take your time to train the fundamentals, take your time to train what's important to you. And so when you start thinking about what can a manager do, it's follow the guide. Follow the guide. I also say model to them the way you want them to treat their clients. Model to them the way you treat them. But here's something I thought, here's a good data point. And Evan, I don't know if this is true for you, since you and I haven't really met and spoken candidly, but you will get, when you have a training program that you can tell them you're plugging them into, you will get higher quality candidates. Because higher quality candidates don't want to just come into a company and have to figure it out. And you can say, I'm investing in you and building your career by putting you through the premier training company in the country. And I'm investing in building your skill set. I also recommend you never tell them it's a 2-week, a 4-week, a 9-week training. You tell them it's a 1-year training program to prepare them for learning. And you tell them we're going to jumpstart you with full-time learning at the beginning before we take you into the real application of touching the customers and the files. But that dialogue of setting proper expectations for the manager on the front end and saying it's 1 year of learning There's structure at the beginning and ongoing as we continue to build you into a new career. So we found that you have a higher quality candidate population when you start saying, looking for great talent, career development program. People go, we want careers, they don't want jobs.
Nope.
And so this is the dialogue where you'll start getting people to lean in that are higher quality candidates.
No, that makes absolute sense, 100%. So let's keep going in that progress, okay? So now we've identified the great candidate, we've hired them, we've assessed them, we put them on the team, we've now invested into their training, we've left them alone. We allowed them to focus, we allowed them to learn at their pace, to absorb. Okay, they've graduated. So Evan, now that they've graduated through the program, what have you found works to have them integrate into what you were saying, your culture, your tech stack, your process flows? What have you seen that works?
That is actually still a work in progress for me. I'm actually hiring somebody to specifically build out, those kind of job aids, establishing KPIs, incentive plans, all of that stuff. So that's a work in progress and definitely a big 2021 accomplishment for me that I'm shooting toward. So right now, the way I did it, kind of, I flew in one of my loan officers into Philadelphia, where they were all training with me. And since I don't originate anymore, I wanted to make sure that they had that real time, kind of real world experience of how that loan kind of starts and the journey, with our tech stack, with Arrive, our LOS, registering it with a lender, and, how to use the lender's portals, all that. So of course, in the broker channel, as you all know, you have that fragmented technology experience. So that's always, there's a lot of training involved with that. So that's definitely that aspect of it isn't as strong, obviously, because didn't have structure behind that.
So you give them a buddy or a mentor or someone that you've partnered them with that'll be there for their obviously their training, their mentoring, their guidance, their who do I go to find out, how do I use this lender portal or the technology or all of that. And it's great to see, Evan, you just said it. Listen, some of these conversations that we're having, if this was 5 years ago, we wouldn't even been this far along. So the fact that you're working on bringing someone on board to be able to have that structure and that development, kudos to you and the entire broker channel, because these were conversations that were done with big banks and lenders and all of that. And now, no, this is what's happening in the broker channel. And that has come so far. So yes, it's always a work in progress. That's for sure.
So Evan, I got to applaud you, because the reality is when you come out of learning just the language itself and even having some skills, the most important aspect for everybody who wants to build a good culture, right? You're small, but you want to be mighty. How do you become a real force in the market? You have to have talented people, and they reflect you. And if you understand the significance of hiring the right one, training them well, and then the third part, because I mentioned there's a 3-part formula, and you're doing it, Evan, whether you realize it or not. The 3-part formula, again, this is after me being doing this for 20 years, of how to build great people, processing, underwriting, and salespeople and leaders. And for those of you who don't know, I had the privilege of being an executive for a $4 billion mortgage company, where we actually were just in 2 markets, and we built new people, hundreds a year from scratch. And this is, again, over time, we figured out, you hit this formula, you'll never lose. Source them well, train them well. And the third is assimilate them well, because the assimilation is the most critical part.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much they know, and it doesn't even matter how much great their skill set is, if they don't know how to assimilate. And that means the disciplines. Because think about a training program, a great one for everybody who's building it. It's got to have knowledge, it's got to have skills, and it's got to have disciplines. Yeah. And what you're doing, Evan, by when they come out of training, teach your tech stack, teach the actual job, like, hey, here's what we want you to do, because everybody's is different. Everybody asks me, do you teach how to process? I'm like, well, processing in your company is different than somebody else's company. But they may have them doing setup. They may have them doing processing. They may have them being a junior processor. They may have them being an LOA, depending on what their decisionings are. The key is when you assimilate them, you give them the disciplines of execution every single day. And you mentioned that you had somebody fly out. You actually chose a mentor. Choosing of the mentor, if you have a team at all, right, a sizable team, even if it's 3 to 4 people, the mentor selection is incredibly important because they set the example. They got to have a great attitude. They got to be your champion, and they've got to have the technical and coaching skills to get that person up to speed. And of course, they got to possess some patience. The reality is when you have a good mentor and you have a good assimilation process, you will win every single time. I think there's a big misnomer, and I have an advisory board of lenders around the country, brokers and lenders all over the country who advise me. And I asked them a question, and this question was very shocking to me, Laura and Evan.
Yeah.
I asked them, I said, how long do you think it takes for you to build a new processor or a new salesperson? They go, oh, a year to 2 years. I said, if I showed you a process, that could get them productive in 30 to 90 days, would you do it? They go, absolutely.
Sure.
The reason people don't is they don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
So we're the how-to company, right?
Right?
We're here to help people really be able to scale themselves. Like Evan, your time, if you really put it on and said, what is your hourly wage? And you're sitting training somebody, it doesn't warrant it. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's some power, if you will, in understanding that formula and detailing out, how do I source, how do I train, and how do I assimilate? So I don't know if that answered your question, but
that's exactly what we've discussed today, right? This isn't just the training piece. It starts with locating the right talent, identifying and doing the proper assessments to make sure that it's the right fit. And like you said, figuring out that formula, because everybody has a different formula. Evan's perfect match may not be the same as mine or Casey's. We may all be looking for something different. But when you take the time to identify that, you're already a step ahead. Then it's the proper training, and then it's the buddying up and the mentoring. And you hit on something very important, Casey. It's not a one-size-fits-all mentor. It's based on that individual and finding the right mentor that clicks for them. So it may not always be that same person. So that's very, very good advice. Okay. And you guys are awesome. This was great. Very, very good conversation. And I want to wrap up with that one piece of advice. What do you want to share to the brokers, whether it's a helpful hint or something to think about? Evan, what piece of advice would you share with your fellow brokers?
I would say tie back to what I said originally. Hire ahead in anticipation. Yeah. The worst thing you can do is get to the point where you can't handle the business, and then you lose your momentum because you're spending time training people. If you have them hired, trained, and ready to go before you hit that critical mass, you can then get to that next level that much quicker. And
hiring during that anxiety usually is not the best bet, because you're clouded a little and you're like, I'll just take that person. They don't fit exactly, but I'll take them and it never works.
I've seen it time and time again. I see other brokers that have hired people out of necessity, and then it just doesn't work out because they're not a culture fit. And then they just wind up going somewhere else. I see that a lot with small business owners, that they get discouraged because sometimes they're more likely to take things too personally as well. So, you got to remember that this is a business, and people are going to come work for you. They may not necessarily agree with the way you do things, or, that kind of thing. And they're going to move on, and you can't take that to heart at the end of the day. You gotta have a short-term memory with that kind of stuff and just keep moving. I've made plenty of hiring mistakes and lost a lot of money in the process. And that's just part of being a business owner or a leader and hiring people. I've hired the wrong people since, I've been in management in 2012 was the first time I became a manager. So and I'll hire the wrong person again in the future. That's just the way it is. So definitely don't take things too personally, because I do see that you know, a lot of brokers tend to get discouraged really quickly when they do make a mistake like that.
And Evan, you sharing that is how we can all learn that, because sometimes when you're a small business owner, you think it's just you because maybe you don't have that sounding board. And that's the whole purpose of why we have these types of discussions, to be able to realize it's not just them. Believe me, we all, I'm sure Casey can repeat the same thing you said, and I certainly can too. We've all been there. And like you said, well, not the first, not the last. All right, awesome. Casey,
So,
what's that advice?
Most important advice for everybody listening in. If you have had, by the way, Evan, I'm on your page, man. We've all had hiring mistakes, right? I think the part that we can help everybody is trust your gut quite often, but you can't hire in a hurry. And it's tempting and you want to, but hiring in a hurry is the number one problem. Remember this, if you start with an amazing job description, I'm going to call it just a job description. If you start with that, and you have to have multiple things on this job description. And I'm happy, Laura, to send this to you, and you can distribute it to everyone. And it's a template.
Awesome.
The template's going to be, what's the mission of the job? Really get that defined. What are the responsibilities? What are they going to have to do? What hours do they need? That's all on the job description. But here comes the big one. And listen, brokers, you're going to appreciate how will you measure their success? Now, we call them at Zenix critical success factors, KPIs, benchmarks, however you want to use. But because I have run HR and I've run training, and I absolutely tell you, when you say, how will this position impact the future growth of my team? But how will I measure them? And you put that on the job description. Let me give you an example. So let's say it's a processor getting new file. Do you want them to make welcome calls within 24 hours of receiving the new client? What do you want them to do that will say for certain that they brought value to you and they're bringing relief and they're driving your business success? So you want to decide, what are the critical success factors? What's the compensation? What kind of job requirement does that position hold in order for you to know what you're looking for? So Laura, if you have a great and clearly defined job description, that's going to help you in your search long term. And so if you start on the wrong foot, you're going to end wrong. So that's probably my most important advice. Now, I got a lot of different things. We can do another call later if you like, where I can help everybody actually build it and give them some examples and countless where they can actually bring it to life in front of them. And that's where you begin with scale. But that's my most important advice. Begin with the end in mind of what you want the job to be.
I love that. And that's great. That's very, very good advice. And please, any templates that you have, we'd love to share with all the groups so that they can take advantage of that. Wow, this was powerful. You guys are amazing. What great insights. And I think we covered it from, obviously that beginning and finding that right candidate. That's the most important. And then, of course, the follow through the process. Thank you both so much for joining me today. This has been phenomenal. And next week, we actually have something that I think piggybacks very nicely into this. We have Grant Botma, which is the broker owner of Stewardship Mortgage in Arizona, but he also is a #1 Amazon bestseller of a book called The Problem Isn't Their Paycheck: How to Attract Top Talent and Build a Thriving Company Culture. So it is a very nice piggyback that goes right after this. So thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Evan. Take care, guys.
Thank you.